Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Monday, May 9th. If you'd please join us for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so I guess we're starting tonight with the Deputy Superintendent for Instructional Support update. Mr. Banks, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. Here to talk to you a little bit about some innovative middle school programming. Some of these two things you may have heard about, and some of them I think have been absent for a couple years and have been brought back recently. With me is Mr. Silver, who helps coordinate these two, and we are going to fill you in a little bit and then also entertain any questions you might have. So first of all, the Science Olympiad, which you may know a little bit about, is an annual event, and it's for Jefferson County sixth graders. All sixth grade students enjoyed a day at Sam Michaels Park this year, going through STEAM-based stations. Jefferson County employees, parents, and community volunteers all work together to present those stations. Stations include anything from paper airplane making, and I'll pause there for a second because I think it was the first day, Mr. Silver, it was 34 degrees and really, really windy. So it was a good day, I think, for paper airplanes. And the engineering that's involved with that. Also, one of the stations was a can crusher experiment that explained the difference between implosion and explosion. So you know middle schoolers were eating this up. Students were able to rotate through 8 stations altogether, stop for a lunch provided by each school's cafeteria staff, and then return back to school by the end of the day. So the Science Olympiad is in full force this year. It has not been the last 2 years during COVID, so it's great to have that back. The second one, again, you may have heard a little bit about this, very interesting program called the Get a Life program. And this was done in April. It's a program from the State Treasurer's Department, and its purpose is to teach students about financial literacy. Through the Jefferson County Chamber of Commerce, volunteers from the community participated in this 2-day event. Students were given a minimum wage job with an income and specific family dynamic. Students then had to go station to station and purchase a home, a car, insurance, pay medical bills, buy groceries, etc. And these community volunteers hosted each station. Students quickly realized how hard it was to pay bills on a minimum wage job. Then students were given a job based on some type of education after high school. Then they went through the same process and were able to see how important types of education, whether it be trade school, military, college, etc., will allow them to financially support themselves and a family. So again, very innovative programming. I think it's very well coordinated through Mr. Silver and principals and teachers, and what a great experience for our middle schoolers. So I'll entertain any questions you might have about either one. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious why you don't offer personal finance as a class instead of just the one day. You have the free curriculum available. Have you thought about offering personal finance as a class?
I have not been a part of any discussion related to that. We had personnel planning, and I believe, and I'm thinking about high school. It is incorporated into the high school in some way. I don't
It's
know
2
which.
weeks and 6
Yes.
weeks.
And I don't believe it's in middle school curriculum, right, Mr. Silver?
No, but it is embedded in some of our CTE courses like BoE. For
Right.
example.
Yeah, I'm just asking for like a standalone.
No, standalone,
class.
but embedded in a lot.
So you're not considering that?
At this time, we have not.
No.
considered it.
Yeah, Mr. Dilly, before he left, he was working on that.
On a standalone course for
Yeah,
financial
yeah.
literacy?
Yeah, I mean, he secured the free curriculum, free teacher training.
Had he secured a staff member to teach it?
Um, it- It's just about it being approved. It's just about bringing it to the board and
Okay.
Well, trying to stay on topic, speaking of the Science Olympiad, somebody that's volunteered to do that, that's an excellent program. And same with Get a Life. It's very interesting to watch these students go to the first station and try to buy a sports car and then realize that they have to eat as well as put a
Yeah.
roof over their head. And then they
Mhm.
come back and try to trade it in for, the Honda Civic.
Yeah.
So I think there are some good lessons learned that day.
Definitely, definitely. I wonder how many students went home and thanked their parents that night.
We had
Yeah.
a couple quotes today. One quote, a student said, "I'm definitely not having kids because they're too expensive to feed." And the other student asked if they had a 1-year-old, if they could hold off from feeding them because a baby probably doesn't eat much and they didn't have enough money to buy the groceries needed. And so it definitely is a learning experience. One student's family dynamics, I think they had 5 children, and they tried to buy a Volkswagen Beetle because that's all they could afford. And the car sales were like, I think you're probably need a bigger vehicle for your family. So definitely a learning experience for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the regular board meeting minutes held April 25th, 2022?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any question or discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes of the regular board meeting from April 25th, 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, citizens' comments. First up on Zoom, we have Zion Kern. And just a reminder that you're limited to 3 minutes, and please refrain from making negative or derogatory comments using a name or position by which an individual can be identified. Comments may not be threatening, profane, vulgar, or abusive, or the speaker will be required to cease his or her comments. Speakers who deviate from the information provided from the speaker form will be called out of order by the chair and required to cease their comments. So whenever Mr. Kern is ready. Oh, he's not online? Okay. Then next up is Karen Buck.
Get a Life program touch on how much plumbers and electricians make with much less student loans and how successful they are. I wonder if they're just pushing them into college or if the plumbers and electricians got equal time. I'm Karen Buck. I'm a concerned citizen. These past 18 months or longer, this board has done much to divide this community and stress out our community, abuse our teachers and staff, confuse and abuse our children in the most evil way possible, and that is psychologically. They have put forth the most destructive and ludicrous programs in our school's history, things that were unheard of just 2 years ago. But we survived. They have intentionally attempted to manipulate and control this community with fear. They have attempted to control everything you see, hear, and think, including what your kids see, hear, and think. They've attempted to convince you that they alone know what's best for your child and that parents don't know what they're doing and are just in the way. But we survived. It has become painfully obvious that this board will do anything to maintain control over our children, the parents, and the money, shamelessly pandering with last-minute special education programs and groundbreaking ceremonies for new schools. By the way, they're replacement schools, not new schools. For declining enrollment. And parents, the Hope Scholarship expires, deadline expires on May the 16th. So we have survived all of this nonsense that you have thrown at us. And now it's our turn. The Bible teaches us to forgive, but we will never forget, and we're never going down this road again. Tomorrow, with God's help, you will finally listen to the parents.
Nothing can stop this from happening. So welcome to the very last meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education Incorporated as we know it. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Next up, we have Vince Costello, followed by Genevieve Costello.
So, good evening. I'm here in support of the Me Too generation and hoping to propel them forward rather than continue to have them held back here at Washington High School. First of all, I'm personally offended regarding the email that was sent to all WHS parents and students on April 29th, 2022. It was an attack on my wife, my daughter, and myself by an anonymous author. At least have the courage to put your name on spin. Here are the facts. On April 27th, 2 boys at Washington High School were wearing No Means Yes bright pink t-shirts. They were openly worn throughout the day in a number of classes that were witnessed by students. The issue was reported to administration by numerous staff and students, and it was not dealt with until 6th period. By then, the damage was done. The fact is the administration at WHS is under leadership of a superintendent who failed the students. The administration is running at 75% with an open AP position. It is filled periodically with an ineffective previous principal, yet we can hire a director to the assistant regional director to make coffee for the director at the board office. Surely there has to be an extra person there that's overpaid that can fill in until that position is filled. It's amazing that 2/3 of the administration at WHS is female, the superintendent is female, and 60% of the current board is female. Yet there remains a date rape culture in this school. Don't believe it? Find comments from current and former students at WHS and their personal experiences with the administration and guidance. The fact that these shirts were allowed to be worn for the majority of the day, where they instilled a sense of fear, anger, frustration, sadness, hopelessness, without being addressed is appalling. According to RAINN, every 68 seconds, another American is sexually assaulted. 1 in 6 women have been a victim of sexual violence. 1 in 33 men have been a victim of sexual violence. 69% of rape victims in the US are women between the ages of 12 and 34. It's alarming that the school allowed 2 boys to wear shirts promoting rape to walk the halls and sit in classrooms. This was not a dress code violation. This was not a student wearing a marijuana t-shirt. These were students wearing Klansmen shirts. The same visceral emotions were being elicited throughout the day. And as mentioned in the anonymous WHS community email, social media is quick to respond. So by 6th period, when it was addressed, the majority of the students knew about this. The administration did too, but failed to act. They have failed the students of WHS, the
Mr.
females who were
Costello.
emotionally affected.
Mr. Costello, I'm sorry, that's your time.
Mr. Clark got to speak for an extended period of time. I have 3 more sentences.
Mr. Clark?
Wayne Clark, when he was on Zoom, he spoke well past his 3 minute.
Well, I'm sorry, but you've reached your 3 minutes. I appreciate you coming tonight. Next, we have Genevieve Costello.
What occurred at Washington High School on Wednesday, April 27th, was more than an isolated incident of 2 uneducated students wearing offensive apparel promoting rape culture with little interference from admin. This is about a systemic display of male favoritism at Washington High School and a lack of empathy towards the student body, particularly towards girls. This is about the fact that time and time again, the concerns of female students have been dismissed. Admin has for years now displayed a pattern of disregard and disrespect when presented with concerns regarding the safety from the female student body. This incident should never have occurred. Admin knew early in the day exactly what was going on, and they knew exactly how uncomfortable and disturbing many students found these shirts to be. You promised you would intervene immediately, but you chose not to. You waited until nearly the end of the day to discipline the boys. The damage had been done, and you showed us where you stood. You could have acted immediately, preventing more students from being victimized by the intimidating messages on these shirts, some crying out of anger or sadness, but you chose not to. You waited. Why? Did you not believe the message to be disturbing enough? Did you not understand it? Did you not find it concerning, the number of people who reported this, the girls in tears in front of you? As I stated in my online post, which Jefferson County Schools described as quote unquote containing both a grain of truth and a high level of inaccurate information, the t-shirts worn during this incident were not simply a dress code violation. These shirts displayed a disgusting message promoting the act of rape. This is an issue of sexual intimidation and harassment, which, according to the WHS handbook, is a level 3 disciplinary violation and is punishable by either ISS or OSS. But of course, WHS admin has the right and responsibility to amend discipline consequences when circumstances and/or investigations warrant change. Why didn't you follow your own protocol? Or, at the very least, order the boys to change clothes? Did you not feel it was necessary to remove the boys from class, possibly preventing more students from being subjected to this disgusting message being insinuated, some even potentially being reminded of the trauma of their own sexual assault? Instead, they were told to cover up at the end of the day. You certainly feel it's necessary to remove female students from the classroom when they dress too provocatively, occasionally subjecting them to ISS or time spent in the main office while they await a change of clothes. Why wasn't this the case with the boys? Why do you continually allow male students to walk free for behavior which female students face much harsher consequences for? Why do you refuse to take the concerns of the female student body seriously?
Thank you. Next up is Melissa Costello.
In August of 1986, I had just turned 14 years old and was awaiting the start of my freshman year of high school. It was also the same August that I was raped by a rising senior. I have never spoken my truth publicly and can count on one hand the number of people that know of my experience. On Wednesday, April 27th, it was reported to administration at Washington High School that 2 male students were wearing pink shirts that says, "No means yes." I feel compelled to speak tonight because I understand the visceral reaction expressed by some students and staff about this message and the mishandling of the report. Even though the incident was reported to administration early in the day, the male students were not called to the office until 6th period. While some may say it's just a shirt, I would argue that it is far more than that. This shirt represents the idea that rape culture is acceptable. The message was purposefully intended to demean, offend, and intimidate a particular student population. Administration's handling of the situation sent a message that the girls' concerns were insignificant. The girls were let down by female administration that they believed would understand the issue. The message sent to the boys was, boys will be boys and just stop misbehaving. The boys spent almost 6 full periods tormenting and intimidating girls while they basked in the attention of their offensive attire. While the girls and women at Washington High School were let down that day by the female administration, so was the male student body. The impressionable teens were led to believe that it was not a big deal, and an opportunity for a genuine learning experience was missed. Perhaps it was poorly handled because the administration does not have their finger on the pulse of the student body, or perhaps they're short-staffed. Since the beginning of the school year, WHS has been operating 1 AP short, and many t-shirt positions are filled with long-term subs. The reality is, the fewer staff, the more things go unnoticed. While staff may have been dealing with more pressing matters on the day in question, they missed an opportunity to prevent a bigger issue from occurring. I believe that the boys are victims too, victims of a school system that did not intervene immediately to prevent the fallout from an all-day wearing of such offensive shirts. In the end, Jefferson County Schools and the administrative staff at WHS owe the students and staff a genuine apology, not an unsigned missive dismissing the issue. The situation has resulted in many students feeling unheard and unsafe, and 2 boys who may not be able to repair their reputations during their remaining years at Washington High School. To the female student body at WHS, continue to stand up for those who are unable, speak out for what's right, and don't be discouraged. I see you, I hear you, I am you.
Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Ms. Loring, are there any changes?
Yes, on the personnel actions, we have 2 deletions. Number 12, delete that appointment, and number 15, please delete that appointment from the personnel actions this evening.
All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, deleting number 12 and number 15? So moved. Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any question or discussion?
Yeah, I have some questions. My question is about, I noticed the coding of 1900 for middle school math teachers. Is that a secondary certification? Because it would be deterring applicants. Or was that a mistake?
1900. Are you talking about a job posting, or are you talking
Yeah,
about the personnel?
job
This is about
posting.
personnel actions this evening.
Are you trying to get her to change,
No,
to move forward? You don't know?
I have no idea
Wait,
what
are
you're talking
you,
about.
Dr. Joy, are you referring to something on tonight's consent agenda?
I'm referring to something related to hiring. So I just thought I could get my question answered, but probably not. So it's just, it's a deterrent. People can apply if they're not certified, but they don't need to be certified in high school math to teach middle school, is my understanding. My other question is related to the treasurer's report, so I guess that's not you.
Okay, any other questions regarding the consent agenda?
Yeah, the finance is under consent agenda, and I have a question. It's on the treasurer's report.
Okay,
Is there anybody gonna answer, can answer that? I have 2 questions. One is, it says judgments, and I'm wondering, does that mean money paid out for lawsuits? Does that, if so, does that include the legal fees? If not, where are the legal fees? What category? And who are the attorneys?
I'm more than happy to take your questions right now and write those down and get our chief financial officer to respond to them, ma'am.
Okay, and then the other question is about Epic expenses. And you said you were going to give a breakdown of all the employees that we are paying through Epic. Is that coming
We
up?
stated that during the budget meeting, which we will be giving to the board, which will be a public hearing, that we would have a category for Epic and explain all of the
And
expenses
that's
in
next
Epic. And
week, right?
yes,
Next
ma'am.
Monday. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
all right, any other questions about the consent agenda? We have a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda with the removal of number 12 and number 15. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All right, thank you. Unfinished business, request approval for a vendor to replace the fire alarm system at Blue Ridge Elementary, which is a bond project.
Good evening. This evening, I ask that you approve Teleplus Corporation with a bid of $124,420 to replace the Blue Ridge Elementary fire alarm.
Is there a motion to approve Teleplus Corporation to replace the fire alarm system at Blue Ridge Elementary? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any questions or discussion?
I have a question. Is that the only bid presented?
Yes, ma'am. We did a widespread advertisement of that. That's a pretty specialized area, and that was the only reputable company that responded.
Thank
You're welcome.
Miss White, have they ever done any fire alarm systems for us before?
For us, it's really rare that you replace those fire alarm systems. A few have started to wear out, so they have not. They are a first-time vendor.
And one other question, is that in line with what we had budgeted with the bond funds?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion on the floor to approve Teleplus Corporation to replace the fire alarm system at Blue Ridge Elementary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, next we have a request for approval for a vendor for carpet removal in select schools, which is also a bond project.
This evening, I ask that the board approve Sherwin-Williams Flooring Division with a bid of $143,712.90.
All right, is there a motion to approve Sherwin-Williams Flooring Division to remove the carpet in select schools?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any questions or discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. That was the only bid.
It was.
Thank you.
That's just carpet removal.
It is carpet removal. This will finish up carpet removal for the bond projects. It's at Wright Denny, Shepherdstown Middle, and Blue Ridge Elementary School. We're putting down LVT. We're putting down some CVT in schools, but in schools where they have noise problems, the LVT will buffer the noise and will last 30 years. Custodians will like it. You don't need to wax it. You can dust mop it.
Who's doing that?
Sherwin-Williams. What?
This is removal and replacement, correct?
Yes. Yes. Removal and replacement.
Now, is Sherwin-Williams themselves going to do this? Did they have a division? or are
They have a
separate?
flooring division and they are doing it themselves. Yes.
All right.
So
All
we need to amend that to removal and replacement.
Sure. Mr. Brown, would you mind amending your motion to read removal and replacement?
Yes, I would like to amend our motion to say removal and replacement of carpet at said schools per the bond project.
Removal and replacement of flooring.
Flooring,
Flooring.
that's specific. Removal and place of flooring at
Thank you.
said schools per bond project.
And I'll second it.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden. Any other questions or discussion? All right, all in favor of approving Sherwin-Williams Flooring Division to remove the carpet and replace it with flooring in select schools, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, we have action to approve a vendor for the TA Lowry roof bond project.
So this will replace the metal roofing on TA Lowry. Blackstone Roofing was the successful bidder with a bid of $550,000, and that's who I'll be recommending this evening. I do want to note that this project is over budget $151,084. Blue Ridge Campus, however, is under budget. So I'm going to be transferring that balance to cover the roofing in this project. The other choice would be to reduce the scope of this project. I am quite aware that construction costs are running high and that we have shifted a few funds to do so due to rising costs. And just want to let you know up front that we're preparing financially for overages should our school projects go over. So we're keeping careful tabs on our bond money, and so far we're doing good with that. And that's why I ask at this time that we can transfer the balance to fully fund this project.
All right, is there a motion to approve Blackstone Roofing as the vendor for the TA Lowry roof bond project? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. You said we're replacing metal roofing.
Yes, on TA Lowry. Mhm.
Doesn't metal roofing last a long time?
In this case, it did not, the way it was built. And there's also issues with the gutters, which cause humidity problems in the schools. So all of that will be addressed in this project to make them not only watertight, but to address the incorrect drainage that comes down into the gutters and off of that roof. So this will correct the problem so that on the inside, the humidity is good. They've had issues with humidity for years, and we want to address that whole thing in this project.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, question. There's a $318,900 difference between Blackstone and Reliance. I'm
Yes.
wondering if the materials are comparable.
Yes, in our specifications, when we bid, we specify certain materials, so they are bidding apples to apples. They bid on the same thing.
Any other questions?
So we have enough money from the Blue Ridge project to cover.
Yes, yes.
How long is the metal roof supposed to be good for?
Oh, I would say at least 30 years.
So this is the first time TA Lowry's, that's one of the,
This is the first time with the metal section, yes, that it needs replaced. So
gotcha.
All right. All in favor of approving Blackstone Roofing as the vendor for the TA Lowry Roof Bond Project, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Next up, we have action on approval of the discussion and consideration of the science book adoption to be placed on public review.
Hello again. Tonight, we present to you the recommendations from the work of the IRRC, also known as the Instructional Resource Review Committee. We're blessed to have with us tonight teachers from all programmatic levels who spent time reviewing materials, getting feedback from colleagues, and ultimately bringing a recommendation back to the IRRC. Tonight, you will learn what those recommendations are and a summary of why those were chosen. I'll begin by turning it over to Mary Lynn, our pre-K through 2 coordinator.
Good evening. How are you guys doing? I'm here tonight to talk about instructional materials review. And one of the first things that we do when we review our instructional resources is we look at the set of non-negotiables. The non-negotiables are a set of criteria that include 5 items that before the materials are even disseminated to the teachers for review, we make sure that these curriculums follow these specific criteria. So I'm just going to briefly go over these 5 criteria with you. The first one is interethnic. We want to make sure that the curriculum that we provide our students has diversity shown in content and illustrations. Another thing that's important is that the curriculum does not sway politically either way, so it's free of bias. Another criteria is equal opportunity. We want to make sure that the contributions of both men and women are evident in all of the curriculum. Fourth is format. We want to make sure that any curriculum that we purchase is offered physically as well as digitally for our students. And last but not least, we want to make sure that any of the instructional materials that are in the hands of our students do not reference the Common Core. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our elementary team. We have Tara Mahoney. Would you like to come up with me and help me introduce our team? I'll introduce our first grade teacher, which is Candy Kaiser. She is a first grade teacher from Blue Ridge Elementary.
And then we have Karina Bordas. She is a 5th grade teacher at Driftwood Elementary School. And finally, we have Deborah Kraus. She's also a 5th grade teacher, and she's at Shepherdstown Elementary.
Good evening. I'm Candy Kaiser, like she said, from Blue Ridge Elementary, teaching 1st grade. I think this is where we go to the next slide. So we chose McGraw-Hill Inspire Science, which is a brand new K-5 curriculum that fosters students' innate curiosity to elevate their critical thinking. It facilitates hands-on investigations to help students deepen their understanding and encourages creative problem solving, inspiring innovation. Next slide, please. Inspire Science is organized into 4 units at every grade level. Each grade level unit has a corresponding student interactive work text and teacher's edition. These 4 utilized books provide flexibility with respect to how teachers deliver instruction. For example, the units can be taught in any order, and the unitized books also provide content nicely chunked for students. Jefferson County teachers will receive these consumable interactive student work texts every year for every student for the life of the Inspire Science adoption.
Next slide, please. Hi, I'm Debbie Kraus. Inspire Science is built on the 5 E's for science. They are engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Each unit has 4 to 5 modules in it. Each module begins with what they call a phenomenon. And it's something that the students see. They get to do a little bit of hands-on. They get to learn about what the STEM project's going to be for that module. And then they engage with it through usually a quick hands-on activity. Then they go to explore and they find out why what they were doing starts working. And then they have to explain what they've learned through the engagement and the exploration. And then after they have a basic understanding of it, we move on to elaborate. With elaborate, they will learn ways that it can be used out in the real world. They will elaborate on their learning, they make it a little bit deeper and move right into that for evaluate. And it's not just me evaluating them, it's going to be them evaluating what they've learned and asking more questions. Why does this work this way? You know, we learned this, but what happens if this goes on? And this process is used not just in elementary school, it is used all through science education. WVU has groups that do, in their engineering department, use the same kind of thing. They engage and they move through the 5 E's. The writing component of this is a claim, evidence, reasoning. Students will make a claim based on some of the things they've learned. That usually happens at about the explain level. And they make a claim. And then they have to use evidence with their claim to say why their claim is correct. And then they have to use reasoning to explain their evidence. Well, I figured out that, you know, my shadow grows longer facing towards the west in the morning because the sun's on the east shining on me. So they will take everything they've learned and then they have to write about it. It's not just telling me, they're going to have to write. Next slide, please. Inspire Science has, it's 100% aligned to the West Virginia College and Career Readiness Standards for Science. I think there's bullet points for this. There we go. It is an interactive student experience. I know the new guidelines students are supposed to be doing, I believe it's 50% hands-on, at least in science, and it is a lot of hands-on. It is a 3D learning and assessments, meaning it's not just here's the way it goes. It's going to be, here's what we're going to do today, and then tomorrow we're doing something similar. So it's not just a flat unit that they'll be doing. Canvas LMS, our LMS system is fully integrated with it. And it has a diverse group of people pictured throughout it. It explores scientists with diverse backgrounds. It has differentiated support, and we have the print and digital editions for it. So we have students who are out, they have access to it even if they're not in school.
Good evening. Next slide, please. One thing that our class or that this particular program has is that it also offers professional development to the educators, as well as in this case, as you'll see, the 7 different areas where teachers can access and find ways to reach their diverse learners, reach their gifted students, reach their ELLs, support one another. Jefferson County is made up of such a diverse community. This program even offers applicable data and information and skills for those in poverty-stricken situations, those within situations where it is not what you would call your stereotypical science text or science curriculum that we've seen in the past. The reason that McGraw-Hill, this Inspire, was so interesting for us, and so the one that the committee selected, was that it offered what Jefferson County has and needs. It offered that material for those students that we have in our diverse community, in our diverse county. Are there any questions?
About the whole thing we've
Yeah.
done? I have a few questions. The 4 criteria that you mentioned, one of them was not to sway politically. Did you mean creation versus evolution? Was that what you meant? I wasn't sure what you meant.
Well, that could be part of it. It could be, right now, the world is very politically charged. Aaron, want to help us out on this one? It's trying not to show a bias.
Right. We found no evidence in the curriculum that swayed either direction in terms of political bias.
I mean, for science, it's not like it's social studies or,
Right. Science.
I just thought, the only thing I could think of was creation versus evolution.
I was gonna say. Go on, yeah.
Was why is he our friend? How do we know it's friend? How do we know that we feel? So
I'm just curious, what does it teach? Creation or evolution or neither? Or-
I didn't see that in the stuff that I perused through the first grade level that my team went through.
So I mean, that's not really an elementary level
Mhm.
standard.
That's not our elementary.
The high school standards do address natural selection and evolution.
Okay. My other question is, you mentioned the consumables and I'm just, and also for the textbooks, are you providing those in Spanish as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
all of those are available both online and in print to our ELL learners, our English language learners.
I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Is this just for the rollout for elementary, or is this elementary, middle, secondary, or what's the plan?
Yeah, thank you, Guy.
Got you. Was it the idea that we wanted to move on from what we had and this is something new, fresh, that speaks to what we're trying to do, or?
Well, 7 years ago, we adopted Cengage, National Geographic, I think. And that adoption period is up. And so we did look at the Cengage materials. We looked at what, 13 different vendors. And narrowed it down through the typical process with our colleagues. And based on the non-negotiables, the standards, what the state evaluation of these materials were, this was one that fits us the best.
So it looks wonderful. It looks like this will be a winner. The next step to this is, as an educated teacher, how do we get this to the teachers for if next year or whenever it's coming? How do we engage them so they don't feel it's being dumped on them? Or
Well, our teachers have had a chance to explore this material themselves. There is a website. I'm sorry, I apologize. You go to the next slide. There is a website where teachers.
we hear you.
I apologize. There is a website where they can explore. I believe it's the last slide, unless it was accidentally removed. That's fine. But they had access to a website where they could explore and just see what the online program was, what the curriculum offered, and they were able to identify that before sharing with us.
You think they'll be ready?
I think we're all ready. I think we're all ready.
We're all excited.
Mhm.
Mr. Banks, is it possible with this, if we go forward with this adoption, to, while they're doing professional development this summer, while we already have so many other things going on, to, since we have a new curriculum, pay our staff to create every lesson, meets content standards, loads in the portal, here's your stuff. So if we have teacher A out, go here, click here, my lesson plan is done, and it's already done, and we've paid our staff ahead of time with new curriculum. They're going to have to learn it and go through it anyway. Let them, generate how that works and make sure it's done, and do it all at the beginning on the front end before we have very tired, very overwhelmed staff trying to start a brand new year with yet new curriculum, and everybody's having to create the wheel. I just think, to me, and I'm not even in the classroom, it just sounds completely overwhelming after the year we've had, and to think about having to spend the summer, doing that. But I'm thinking that if everybody kind of worked together to do a small part of it, not everybody would have to work so hard.
Right.
Obviously, you can do whatever you want, but at least something's there as a backup if, God forbid, you have something happen or something's going on.
teachers can support each other and be paid to actually do that somehow. And I think with a new curriculum, it's when to do it.
That's an excellent recommendation. I don't know, is there anything that you would like to speak to as far as planning that you noticed in the materials that we're presenting tonight? It might make it easier for a teacher.
Well, as a teacher that was what's the word I'm looking for?
I was going to say guinea pig. That's okay.
For the new CKLA, going into this year and starting that curriculum. And now that I have my feet solid on the ground there, I can speak to the other teachers who will be taking on CKLA and a new science curriculum. This is the easy part. And I think that it is laid out in a manner just like CKLA, the lessons are there. You just have to follow it. The hands-on textbooks and stuff like that are colorful, like everything there. I was doing this while doing CKLA. So I think it would be easy not easy, but we are up to the challenge is what I think JCS employees are.
Yeah, and
ready to
I'm
do.
thinking, for you guys who are seasoned and how this is going, but I'm thinking about long-term subs, other substitutes. You'd like to have at least a day off to go to the doctor's appointment, take your child somewhere, things like that. Then we end up, not necessarily having what we need, and with knowing that CKLA is also going to be an issue, having that opportunity to do both, possibly the ones who've done that, load those in, just, helping each other out so that everyone is prepared. I would much rather fund the money to do something in that realm than just say, here you go. Not only are you going to do a whole new English, now you're going to do a whole new science. And oh, guess what? Next year you might get to do a whole new math or 2 years or 3 years or, whatever. It just seems absolutely overwhelming. So, I mean, if we can at least have some kind of a plan of action for that, it would make me feel a lot more comfortable to say, at least to stamp, okay, let's go with science rather than say, I can't
Yeah,
do it.
that's
Like,
understandable. It is
you know.
overwhelming for sure.
One of the nice things about the Inspire Science is that the lab packs are pre-bagged, so everything's ready. The kits are ready. So we're doing a lab. I know that I can pull it out the afternoon before, that morning of, and I've got all my student packs set up and my stuff is set up for demos. And I don't have to be like, oh, we need this from here and that from there. And oh man, I lost the pipe cleaners. Everything is set up and ready to go. So that will make it much easier for us. Doing labs, doing hands-on, getting the kids, getting their feet wet, letting them have the fun. But yeah, it's going to be fun.
We need to be sure that those consumables are purchased each year. So next year, when you get in that kit, that all
Yes.
kits there as well.
Yes.
Okay, next up, we have Mr. Silver with some middle school staff.
And as my team comes first, I want to commend the work that they put in for the science adoption, just like our ELA. They spent countless hours after school in the committee. We went through countless presentations from vendors, so they deserve a lot of credit for what they've done. And so I'm just going to have them introduce themselves individually so you can get to know them.
I'm Kara Jeffries and I work at Harpers Ferry Middle School.
I'm Cagney Helmick. I'm from Wildwood Middle School.
Sandra Fossford, Charlestown Middle School, 8th grade science.
I'm Christy Kessler. I'm 6th grade science at Shepherdstown Middle School.
Good evening. I'm Anna Mia Fennell and I'm at Harpers Ferry Middle School as an instructional coach.
Perfect. And so, we went with, or the committee went with Twig Science. And on our committee, you will notice that every school was represented, every grade level was represented, general education and special education was represented. So we did have a whole picture. So I'll let Ms. Jeffries go ahead and take over.
So at this time, we would like to share why we, the Middle School Adoption Committee, chose Twig. First, we chose Twig because it is an investigation-based science developed specifically for our West Virginia college and career readiness standards that will be effective July 1st of 2022. And as you will see through our presentation, students will explore all three dimensions of the West Virginia standards through the 5E lesson design. Not only does TWIG match our West Virginia science standards, in each lesson, it shows the teacher how it meets math, reading, and our ELA standards, and how they will be taught in each of the modules. On the next slide, this slide, Jason, you will see how the students will start the lesson with a pre-exploration diagnostic and a real-world phenomena that is connected to the standards along with the topic of the module. Students and teachers will know how they are moving through each module with a phenomenon tracker. The students will move through the lesson with engagement, exploration, explanation, elaboration, and evaluation. As we look at the next slide in our example lesson, you notice that each step of the 5E lesson design is broken down to how much time each lesson requires inside the module. This allows the students to activate their prior knowledge and thinking in regards to the module topic. The students will expand their depth of knowledge on the topic using hands-on investigations, videos, and instructional text. The instructional texts, I would like to note, are both print and digital. TWIG allows for students to build models and develop both academic and scientific vocabulary through their application and critique of alternative models. And all along the module, the students have been gaining a greater knowledge on the topic and are capable of explaining their understanding of the anchor phenomenon, which is evaluated with a rubric. And all of that is given to us in this curriculum.
Could you go to the next slide, please? Oh, I think we're missing. Okay, well, the slide, okay, sorry about that. The slide that's missing, the next slide is talks about the labs. With the TWIG program, one of the best things we felt about it was that the number of labs it offered for the whole of the middle school, it was 10 to 12 labs for the entire year for each grade. It is 3 times what the other vendors had offered us. And for us, we felt that it kept in with the 50% hands-on that we're trying to achieve our goals in Jefferson County. The next slide, the slide we have up here, a universal access. It makes it very easy for us to differentiate. We have touch of a button. We can help with the ability to accommodate some students. It has for the digital access. It has the ability to reduce some of the flashiness to help with some students who may have that distractions, a little less of the bling bling in some of the online presentations. And then next slide. Okay, it also helps for contemporary and diverse scientists. It features a lot of scientists that we hope, have kids saying that person looks like me. Male, female, different backgrounds, and current and up-to-date scientists, and along with historic figures. And I did want to add that they offer personal development training for us. So in the summertime, before we get started, they have personal development hours. It integrates with Canvas and Clever. And it has also some online personal development that as you go along. That's it. Any questions?
I have some questions. I just get the impression this is online. Is there a textbook?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. There is a textbook. They have some of the schools we can choose how we want. So if we want it's similar to the elementary school where there are modules and there is a smaller, so for each section, there's a book that goes along with it. It can be fully digital. It can be textbook. We could have classroom sets more sets for each student, depending on what the schools want to choose.
So you didn't really mention a lot about labs and experiments. Do they do that?
Yes, so this twig was actually the one that gave us the most labs out of all the vendors we looked at. There were 10 to 12 labs per grade level in middle school. So a lot of hands-on activities. They are all put together for one for a classroom size of 30 that come prepackaged and ready to go. The consumables are refilled for
So
the duration of the,
if the school chooses to do modules, then the teacher will do a group experiment separate, or do they do these on their own?
So when we're calling them modules, modules is what the lessons are. So that's like a unit. So each
Okay.
module is its own unit, and each unit lasts anywhere from 5 to 7 days in a lesson. And so there's the hands-on lab part, there's the text part, but the textbooks, all of the middle school curriculum that we looked at, the majority of it is journals and not a textbook like we're used to seeing. None of the curriculum that we looked at had a textbook that met the standards or the expectations from the state. And we kind of went with what met those standards at what we looked at.
I just have one more question. I am not familiar with middle school science curriculum. I guess it covers life, earth, physical science, or is there?
It does life science, physical science, earth science, and chemistry. It covers genetics. It kind of covers, it's a general, and it's kind of broken up each year. We do something a little bit different.
I got it.
The
That
idea
journal
is to get
really,
them a
tied it together.
well-rounded individual so that they get ready for high school.
Mhm.
That when they go into as a ninth grader and they're dealing with earth science, they know their way around the rock cycle. They know their way around space. So the idea is those modules take you through an element of what's going on in the curriculum, that once they get to the high school and they have a class for primarily to that subject, they've been exposed to it, they know of it, so that they're ready to go
Mhm.
once they get to that point.
Makes sense. Sounds like it gives a good foundation.
One of the things that we all liked about the modules is that we can choose the modules. And what Twig told us was the way that we set our modules up for 6th grade, all of our books would be put together for 6th grade. All of them would be put together for 7th grade. Because right now, the curriculum we're currently using, we kind of have to bounce, like share. I have to share with the other 7th grade and 8th grade because I teach 6th grade with what we currently have, where Twig would give us everything I would need for 6th grade to meet all my 6th grade standards.
So they would create it especially for.
They're creating
the school
this
system.
special for the state of West Virginia.
Just had a quick question based on that, Mr. Silver. Do we have a mapping guide then so that every school is going through exactly the same module at exactly the same time? So that it,
That is part 2 of this, yeah. So
Okay.
once we get the adopted or the approval from the board to adopt, then the same committee, and we will add extra teachers then who are willing to sit on that. We will then map out this curriculum and align it to our pacing guide. That will be our next step, yes, ma'am.
Could you map that by August?
Yeah, yes.
June?
And,
So we
and the
have a
reason I
summer.
say yes, not that it's not a daunting task, but the way Twig is set up, 85% of it's kind of mapped for us. So it would just be connecting our content standards with what it has.
I know mapping could be overwhelming every blue moon, so.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Cantley, Coordinator of High Schools, and I have with me some fabulous high school science teachers who dove in and did a extraordinarily in-depth review of lots of science courses to align them with the West Virginia College and Career Readiness Standards, as well as our College Board standards for our AP courses. We have Dana Jurashek Amanda Sosnicki, Jessica Rustler, and Jamie Ritzenthaler, here to present to you today.
Good evening. We made sure as we looked through all these various resources, we had many vendors to choose from, that all of our textbooks will meet the non-negotiable standards that were previously discussed by the lower grades. They all apply to all grades, all sections. We also made sure that not only did we meet the minimum college readiness and core content standards, we made sure to choose the highest percent met. All of our textbooks integrate fully with Canvas with features that assist all different learning styles, including and especially paying attention to our special ed students, our ELL students. We wanted to have engaging content with a serious emphasis on the 50% hands-on in labs. So all of our textbooks do meet that. We have supports for teachers in place to help with professional development, differentiated instruction, and small group instruction, anything that the teachers need.
The publishers that we had selected between Washington and Jefferson High School for Earth and Space Science is McGraw-Hill. For general level biology and CP level, it's McGraw-Hill. For biology honors, it was Savvis. AP Bio, we went with BFW. For chemistry, it's Savvis. AP Chem is Cengage. Human anatomy and physiology is Savvis. Physical science is McGraw-Hill. Physics is Savvis. AP Physics is McGraw-Hill. Forensics is Savvis. Environmental is Savvis. And AP Environmental is Cengage.
I'm going to assume before I say thank you that one of the questions you're going to ask is why so many publishers for high school, because that's the question I get from my high school and my colleagues. So high school science is a little bit different than some of the primary sciences and even middle school sciences in the sense that they are specialized. And because of that, some of these publishers do a better job of actually addressing the standards the way that they need to by subject. Also, some of them did not meet the non-negotiables. Some of the publishers did not meet the non-negotiables. So we couldn't go with one full publisher. Because of that, we did break down into our smaller cohorts. There was input from all of the science teachers and special education teachers that are involved in science in making these decisions. So it was not lightly, and we do know that it does look somewhat haphazard when we look at this sheet. I do thank you for your time. I do thank you for your time on behalf of our committee, and I'm assuming there's going to be other questions. So thank you.
Thank you for your explanation. I mean, it makes perfect sense because if I'm shopping for, a phone, I'm going to go to Apple. If I'm shopping for a pen, I'm not going to go to Apple. I'm going to go to, Bic or something. So I understand why it's the little potpourri of science books.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Are there any other questions?
I just have one. I'm assuming that you just create your own labs.
Actually, no. As Jessica pointed out, each one of these comes with a lab. So one of the reasons and one of the things that we considered were some of the things that were brought up by you during the previous presentations. So all of them provide professional development to use their platforms. They also offer professional development and 24-hour tech service. They also are providing with laboratory exercises, and they also allow them for the starting teachers and for the long-term subs. So it's not like you're getting just a textbook, you're getting kind of a full package that you can then pick and choose from. One of the vendors, specifically in chemistry, one of the reasons why we went with it was because of the fact that they offered multiple labs that you could choose from for the same topic, given any situation. So one of them was actually a truncated version of the lab in case a fire alarm goes off. One of them was a more advanced lab that you might have for your more advanced students. So there was differentiation even within some of the supplemental materials that were provided, which included labs.
So they'll get the online and the hard copies of these books.
Yes, I believe the plan is that we will have a classroom set of the hard copies in every single one of the classrooms. There will be textbooks available for anyone who elects to take a paper copy home, and every student will have access to the online through Canvas. Any other questions?
I just had a question, if with either yourself or Ms. Cantley, about where are we? I know there's a lot of options, but on the alignment to the standards, you said we got it as high as we could, but what, are we all over the board with percentages as far as how much it relates to our content standards?
State code
statewide?
says we have to have a minimum of 80%
Okay,
of the curriculum meeting adequate or in-depth. These ladies on the committee, they didn't settle for adequate. They wanted, literally, they wanted the most in-depth coverage of the content standards for the curriculum. That's why we had to have such a mix, because if the chemistry vendor covered in-depth, and that's what they went with. If the biology vendor went in-depth, that's why we have a different one for biology. And they all have online access with interactive labs, and they've met with the technology department on calls to make sure they integrate, the labs even integrate with Canvas. So it was a very thorough, I was very proud of this team. The nice thing about the labs, to follow up with what Ms. Cantley was saying and the question that Ms. Joy asked, was the fact that we have hands-on labs that are provided for this, as well as the online options. So it also enables us to do things like makeups that are difficult to do by supplementing with the online labs if a student is, say, out for COVID for 10 to 15 days or 5 or whatever. So it does help with that, and also helping the students to make up, especially in a very demanding curriculum that the students seem to be taking on lately.
Thank everybody for, number one, taking the time to go through these, because it's not an easy task. And number two, for being here this evening. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Just wanted to mention that these presented materials will be placed on public review. And then we will, on the May 23rd agenda, ask for your approval after that public review has finished. And we will bring with us any comments that we receive about the materials.
So you'll tell exactly where the public can find the items?
Yes, ma'am.
And when?
Yes,
It'll be on the website or something?
it'll be on the web. Hans is taking care of that. It's on the website, and then they'll be set up in the board office as well.
and then about how long is the turnaround with supply chain and everything else? How long would be our turnaround?
To get the materials?
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that right now.
Okay.
Not sure.
Mr. Banks, you're asking them to be put out for 2 weeks?
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that- Okay. Is there a motion to approve putting the science book adoption choices out for public review for the next 2 weeks?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Joy. Any other discussion or question? All right, all in favor of putting the science adoption books out for public review for the next 2 weeks, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Madam Superintendent, do you have any comments this evening? All right. And we don't have any need for an executive session. All right, then 8:08, meeting adjourned. Everybody enjoy your day off and do your civic duty and go vote. Thank you.